make the filling for our coconut cream pie. So the first thing we do is take a can of coconut milk. It's a 14-ounce can. A cup of whole milk. A third cup of sugar. A half cup of unsweetened coconut. And a half of a teaspoon of salt. And we're going to bring this to a boil. And this is one you don't have to stir constantly. We're just going to let it boil. And while that's boiling, we're going to mix the rest of the ingredients. While our milks are simmering, we are going to take a third cup of sugar, 5 egg yolks, and a quarter cup of cornstarch. Cornstarch is the thickening agent that's going to turn this from soup to pudding. And stir this together. And then wait for our milk to boil. Okay, if you look, the rolling boil is beginning. So we're going to reduce the heat back to medium. We're going to walk over here, pour just a little bit of it into our egg mixture to temper. Remember that if you try to add the eggs all at once with that hot milk mixture, you're going to have scrambled egg yolks in the middle of your custard, and you don't want that. So we add a little bit at a time to temper it, and then we're going to put it all back in the saucepan. So this is going to go back on the stove until it all thickens up. Just a couple minutes. It doesn't take long. Let that sit until the bubbles start to pop on the surface. Okay, so our bubbles are popping on the surface. So we're going to just stir it up. Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter and a teaspoon and a half of vanilla to smooth these chunks out. So, teaspoon and a half of vanilla. 2 tablespoons of butter. So some of the smaller chunks are going to be your coconut, which is just, it's in there. But we want to smooth out the big chunks. That's what the butter will do. And then we're going to let it sit for 5 minutes and cool down before we put it in our pie crust, which we made in an earlier episode. So I use a Graham Cracker Crust for my coconut cream pie. Alright, our Graham Cracker Crust is made. Our coconut cream filling is just cool enough. And we're going to put it in our pie shell. And then, I don't know if you've ever made a custard pie or a custard of any kind that then goes in the refrigerator. But you get that film over the top as it cools because it's milk and it's cooling. So, I have a little trick for you. You take a piece of wax paper and spray it with whatever cooking spray you have on hand. So, put it over the top. You can seal in. We'll then get some cellophane and wrap it around, but we will seal in so that it doesn't create that film, but it will come right off because it's got the cooking spray on wax paper. Alright, so we've put our film on the top, and what we're going to do is put this in the refrigerator for at least 4 hours before we make our coconut whipped topping to go on the top. So my coconut cream pie has been cooling off in the refrigerator for the last 4 hours or so. Now we're going to make the whipped cream topping. 1.5 cups of heavy cream, a tablespoon and a half of sugar, and 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, just to give it a little kick. And we're gonna mix that on high until stiff peaks form. I feel like I've said that once or twice. So our vanilla whipped cream is done. We have our stiff peaks. The cream is keeping its place. Now we're gonna use a piping bag and put it on our coconut cream pie. So sometimes my husband is here to hold the piping bag while I fill it, and sometimes he is not. So one of my tricks is to put it in a cup, fold the bag down, and then I can drop it in without having to hold on to the end of it. Start with that. So we're going to unwrap our coconut cream pie. Remember, we put this in the refrigerator with that piece of wax paper sprayed with Pam to keep the cream from coming up. And look at that. So now we can, I like to pipe pretty rosettes around it, but you can pretty much do whatever you want to. Just make sure that you cover all of the custard, or that film we were trying to keep from happening yesterday is going to be there anyway. And when you have these little holes, just a little star will do. It fits right in with your rose motif. We're going to need to fill this bag up some more. Now I like to cover my pies, all of them, with whipped cream. The problem is when you arrive at your destination and find out you have 6 pies and they're all covered in whipped cream, and what's underneath on that one? So sometimes I do different designs, and sometimes my solution is a little more basic, as this one is going to be. Now that we have it all of that coconut cream covered in whipped cream, I'm going to take some toasted coconut and sprinkle it over the top, and this will remind me when I get to our Friendsgiving party what's inside.